Well, it's just afternoon, and welcome to the Wifey Wake Up podcast. Any time of the day is a great time to wake up in your life, and that's what this is all about at the Wifey Wake Up podcast and wifeyschool.us. I'm Tara, and I base everything that I share with you on my 20 plus years, just shy of 24 years at this point, of a successful marriage with my husband, and sharing the stuff like Cliff's Notes in life so that you can go through the challenges in life that are inevitable. Not that you'll go through everything, hopefully, but you'll go through challenges, but you can go through them more smoothly in less time, and you get to each happy ending points in life rather than the struggle. So today I'm sharing with you the unexpected way my husband saved our marriage and our lives when we needed it the most. Now, the previous recent podcast was about what I did at challenging points in our marriage to help change things around. And while this podcast and this content is geared towards women, sometimes it's helpful to recognize what the husband is or has been doing in hindsight, or to get a different perspective, because I have a feeling those of you who are going through some challenging points in your relationship, your husband very well may be doing these things, but it's so easy to get so focused in how you're feeling and what's not right in your mind. And believe me, I'm not blaming you, okay? I've been there, and I want to share with you in a sisterly kind of way, not in a shaming, condemning, judging sort of way. I want to help you get through this, not make you feel bad about this. So it's about tools to help you move along. And so your husband may be doing these things as well, but it's so easy to get caught in our feelings that it's hard to see the forest for the trees, as they say. So just a little bit of a summary. Someday I may go into more details about kind of this state of our marriage, but just to briefly summarize it was a stage where I was in tremendous grief, where I had really come to the realization that I had lost my family of origin, and then also at the same time not seeing the future come to fruition that I had envisioned. And so for me, this was what, in the modern sense, because this term also has a very old meaning as well, but in the modern meaning, I was in a very dark night of the soul era. And I mean era because it was, we say several to you, 7, or is it like 3 or 4? I think each person kind of has a different idea of that. I think it's more towards 7 because it's several, but I think technically when you look it up, it's around 3 or 4 years. But it was a good half decade at least that, or more than that I was going through this very trying time. And it was just, anyways, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I wanted to relate in a way so that with enough detail that you could relate as well, but not too much where it's like, oh no, I don't have that situation. I think many of us, if you've been in marriage long enough, you go through some similar type of situation, although the circumstances may be entirely different. So I just wanted to set the stage there. So I'm going to go into a story to illustrate this, because it's just, as I was pondering how to relay this information this morning, this story came to me. I was like, oh, this is perfect. Thanks God for that hint. So it was near the beginning of our relationship, 24 years ago, our first year of marriage, and we were picking up some products from a business colleague. We were in a multi-level marketing business at that time, and that was a great experience for us. But aside from that, so we were picking up products, and it's in a city called Richfield, and it's right next to Minneapolis. So it's right in the Minneapolis area, surrounded by big highways and so forth. And there's a really short on-ramp onto this one highway that I was merging onto. And I was driving. It was really unusual that I was driving. Usually my husband drives, and I have no idea why I was driving. I do not recall. but especially because I hate this on-ramp. I think they've since fixed it, but it's a tiny on-ramp to go onto a highway that, people are traveling 60 plus miles an hour. So I looked over my shoulder. We're driving a fairly new Z71 pickup, extended cab, so a decent vehicle, a nice vehicle. Always kept in great shape. My husband's a former motocross and snowcross racer, so he's all about, making sure that everything's tuned up just right. And so I'm doing what you're supposed to do, right? You're going down the on-ramp, and I'm looking over my shoulder. Everything looks good. I've got my spots to merge. I look over my shoulder again just to be sure. And in the distance, but I can see is quickly approaching, is this tiny red convertible. And I know that if I keep merging as I'm planning to merge, that I'm just going to obliterate this tiny convertible. Like, it will just, our vehicle, our decently large truck would just not only ram into the car, but it would basically run over the people. And so with that in mind, in that brief second, I steer to the right. So, and fairly straight, right? I mean, there's a jerk, and I felt the body roll of the vehicle. So this is all in hindsight, right? That I'm remembering all, or was able to assess these things. Now, flashback a little bit further. I grew up in the country, and we had tar roads, of course. Did a lot of my learning and learned how to ride a bike on gravel. After school, I would go out on my three-wheeler and go for miles and miles and miles on the country road. I would go so far, and mind you, there's not a gas gauge on the three-wheeler. I would go so far, my parents would be like, you're going to run out of gas someday and be stranded somewhere before cell phones, right? And I was like, no, I'm not going to. I would get home all the time, and there's only fumes basically left in the gas tank. And by the way, never got stranded, never ran out of gas. So just had to say that. But my point is that I grew up on gravel roads, right? I knew about counter steering, the slide of the vehicle that I was driving, and that was familiar to me. However, I was on tar when this incident happened, and so I think the body roll of the vehicle kind of triggered in me, I need to counter steer. And so I started quickly counter steering with both hands on the wheel, and like at least my entire upper body moving in that direction. My husband's in the passenger seat, and that split of the second, he's interpreting what's going on. He reaches over with his left hand and he grabs the steering wheel. No kidding, like his arm felt like it was a steel bar reaching across. I had my whole body, top body, leaning into the counter steer, and he stopped it exactly to keep us going straight. And this era of Chevy, by the way, Chevy truck, had a steering wheel that kind of had an awkward, it had bars, like the support bars at like the 8 o'clock, the 10 o'clock, the 2 o'clock, and the 4 o'clock positions. So when he shot out his arm, it hit exactly where the 3 o'clock position is. And that gap, it was, a gap probably no bigger than this. And he straightened us out. And I was just shocked. I mean, shocked from the original occurrence and then him straightening us out. And, the next off-ramp, I took the next off-ramp, and because I was very soon like shaking from the whole shock of it all, that he had literally saved our lives, the people for sure in that vehicle, and likely from us just toppling over end due to the accident that would nearly happened. Okay, so why do I share all of that? That story, as I look back, is such a great representation of how he has pulled us out of troubling times in our marriage, where I've been, we all do. We act on our instinct, on what we've grown up knowing, what we've learned since, hopefully. But it doesn't mean that it's always right. Your instinct may not always be right. Like, if you've grown up on gravel roads like I did, and I felt the body roll of the vehicle should indicate a counter steer, and that was totally the wrong move. And thank God that his wherewithal, his former racing and for sure God's grace, he stuck out his arm and, wasn't like, honey, what's going on? Right? He just stuck out his arm and stopped us from going off track, and more importantly, kept us going straight ahead, out of harm's way. And there's so much metaphor in this story. Even as I was writing it down this morning and peeling it apart, that there's so much to it. And I want to relate to you ladies who are listening to this. And I really hope that you're getting to this point to where that your guard is down, in the sense that I hope you realize that me sharing these stories, again, I want to emphasize, are in a sisterly kind of way. Here are the things that I learned. Here are the challenges that I went through, and you don't have to go through these challenges in your relationship. And so one thing that I'd like to convey is that, early on in a relationship, if you have a man in your life, your husband is a man, you were probably attracted to him at some point because you saw him looking manly, having a manly presence among his friends or colleagues, and taking command of a group, for example, not because he has positional leadership, like he's the older brother or he just has more seniority in the group, but because people respect him, and that he has knowledge and he has earned his position. And recalling back that also stimulated in you an attraction, and that years down the line, all sorts of things can happen where you not only lose that attraction, but it's largely based in because you lose the respect for him. And it can happen for all sorts of reasons. But I encourage you to go back and realize what you did see in him. And when you saw him in this literal or metaphoric group, and him leading in some sort of way, or helping, or being a person to look up to. And because when you're at the latter stages, hopefully you're not there, but you're probably listening to this because you are. When you're at the latter stages where you've lost that respect or reverence or sense of awe or looking up to him, it's a very steep downhill slope into resentment, into just, even disgust. And when you're headed in that direction, it's also easy to see what you would have earlier seen as his leadership ability for the family, saying, we're not going to do that. That's not a healthy group of people to be around. We're not going to eat in that way because that's not a healthy thing to do. Let's talk about that conversation you said you had with your friend, because it sounds like that is not supportive of our relationship, that you're actually tearing down our relationship with our friend. That's a previous podcast. Early on, you might have, you likely saw this as, okay, he is leading our family. He's, I respect him. I see him doing all these great things in the community and our family. And later on, if you've lost respect, built up, these really toxic feelings of resentment and so forth, you'll tend to look at those moves, his saying the same things, as control, when previously they would have actually been him leading the family. And I point that out because I too have been there. I've thought to myself, is he being controlling, or am I just misinterpreting this? Because I have a different attitude about him and our relationship at this point. Now, honestly, I didn't get to that point in the conversation I had that quickly. It took a while. I took time to assess, what am I really thinking and feeling? And fortunately, I came around to understanding, I'm seeing him in a different light. And he is acting as he did prior, early in our relationship, setting the tone, setting the direction for our relationship as the leader of our family. And he would, at times, many times in our relationship, very early on, even when we were dating, for example, when we were dating, I was just recently out of high school. And so you still kind of have your high school habits, right? You hang out with the same types of friends, you have guy and girlfriends. And I had just moved in with my soon to be husband at that time. And I had a couple of guy friends over. Now I don't even remember. I was like, I think showing them even where I was living. They knew my husband to be, all that. It was just a quick visit. And my husband, after they left, he's like, let's sit down and have a talk. And he said, I want to be with you. I love you. However, how would he have said it? He was very careful to say that he cared for me and he wanted to be with me. So that put me at ease. But he also then set a boundary. He said, I know in my experience that relationships don't work when you have friends of the opposite sex. And then he explained a bit without going too much detail of his past, just enough to go, yeah, I know he's been around this earth longer than I have. And I trusted in his judgment. And he explained just a little bit to give me the insight, but not too much to be like too much going into his past relationships. And that was him setting the boundary. That was him grabbing the steering wheel and going, nope, we're going in this direction. You can go with me in this direction. I'd like you to join me. We're going in this direction. And at other times in our life, there had to be even some stern talks. But always with that, I love you, I want to be with you, but this is not acceptable. But giving a direction, explaining just enough, not necessarily over-explain, but, being very reasonable, logical, and this is where we're headed. And I think metaphorically in that story, and obviously literally, it has saved our lives and our marriage life. And it is really the perfect story to relay that sometimes what seems like a harsh correction is actually really what is needed. And by no means, I feel it bothers me that I even need to say these things, that we have to actually state what is proper and improper way of behaving. But I'm going to say it so that I don't get pilloried in the comments. Of course, I'm not condoning a man who is yelling and screaming and stomping and throwing things and saying, women, this is how things have to be. Absolutely not. If you're in a marriage, in a loving relationship, you're sitting down like two grown adults and you're having a conversation and you're on the same path. You're discussing the direction, where you want to be and the direction you want to go and what that means. And that does mean even after you've been married, sometimes you have to clarify the boundaries, restate the vision, and right the ship. And I think that story is just such a beautiful illustration. I have a tendency to repeat myself to make sure the point gets across, but I'm making even more of a point to keep these podcasts short so that if you need to, if you want to, you can just re-listen to this and hear the story again and just imagine this story and how many amazing metaphors there are in it. I am still blown away as I recalled this morning. As always, I love hearing from you in the comments. Guys, ladies, it's also a great way to have some dialogue among men and women who in your own right have experienced what you have in your own life experience, but you're not directly involved, right? It's those people that you're directly involved with that can kind of trigger you. And I don't like using catchwords like that are so popular today, but nonetheless, I love hearing from you. I think it's very helpful to hear each other's comments, and you all have been so wonderful also in having those adult-like comments and conversations, right? I've appreciated hearing from you. We can really learn from each other. Of course, like, subscribe, share with a friend that you think could benefit from this or might find this interesting. And of course, if you're like, Tara, that sounds great, but I don't know where to go next, you can contact me. My information is in the chat where we could have a text, a video, a voice chat, and I can help you on that next step of your journey. And if you just enjoy this content, I would totally appreciate a tip in the tip jar. It helps me buy a cup of coffee, a lunch out, or a dinner out with my best buddy, who is my husband. And you all, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.